When you hear the word rich, what comes to mind? Luxury cars, massive houses, private jets, bank accounts filled with money. But now imagine traveling back 10,000 years. There are no banks, no gold coins, no stock markets, no luxury brands. And yet, some people were still richer than others. In fact, long before kings, empires, and cities existed, certain humans already enjoyed advantages that others could only dream of. More food, better tools, greater influence, more social connections, higher chances of survival. So what was it actually like to be rich in the ancient world? What did wealth mean before money existed? And if you had been born into one of those prehistoric communities, would you have recognized who the rich people were? The answer may be very different from what you expect, because the first wealthy humans didn't own what modern people value most. They owned something far more important, something that often meant the difference between life and death. Let's begin with a strange realization. For most of human history, money did not exist. No coins, no paper bills, no digital payments, nothing. Yet people still understood value. A skilled hunter was valuable. A reliable ally was valuable. Access to food was valuable. Knowledge was valuable. Wealth existed long before currency. It simply looked different. Imagine a prehistoric camp. Dozens of people gathered around fires. Some families struggle every season. Others always seem secure. They have food when food is scarce. They have tools when tools are needed. They have connections when problems arise. That was wealth, not numbers in an account, but advantages that increased your odds of survival. Today, wealthy people often buy time. Ancient humans did the same, just in a different way. Imagine two hunters. One spends every day searching desperately for food. The other belongs to a large network of relatives and allies. If a hunt fails, others help. If he becomes injured, others provide support. If resources become scarce, he has options. Who is richer? The answer is obvious. In prehistoric societies, social connections could be more valuable than any physical possession. Your network was your insurance policy, your protection, your safety net. The richest people were often those surrounded by the strongest relationships. Now, imagine living through a harsh winter. Animals become harder to find. Plants disappear. Hunger spreads through the landscape. At that moment, nothing matters more than food. Not status, not appearance, not comfort. Food. A family with large food reserves could survive challenges that destroyed others. A successful hunter gained influence. A skilled gatherer became respected. The ability to consistently provide food often created the closest thing prehistoric humans had to wealth. Because, in a world where starvation was always nearby, a full stomach was a luxury. As human societies became more complex, something interesting happened. Certain objects became symbols of status. Rare shells, beautiful stones, exotic animal teeth, decorated tools, objects brought from distant regions. These items often had little practical value, but they carried social value. They signaled something important. This person has influence. This person has connections. This person can obtain things others cannot. Sound familiar? Thousands of years later, humans still use status symbols for exactly the same reason. Only the objects have changed. But perhaps the greatest source of ancient wealth wasn't material at all. It was knowledge. Imagine knowing where animals migrate, knowing which plants are edible, knowing where water can be found during a drought, knowing how to make better tools, knowing how to survive. In prehistoric societies, this information could be priceless. An elder carrying decades of experience might be one of the most valuable people in the entire group, because knowledge didn't just improve life, it preserved life. And those who possessed it often gained respect, influence, and security. Here's where modern assumptions begin to fail. Being rich in ancient times did not always mean living separately from everyone else. In many communities, survival depended on sharing. A hunter who refused to share food could lose trust. A selfish individual could become isolated. And isolation was dangerous. Very dangerous. Human beings survived because they cooperated. As a result, wealth often worked differently than it does today. Status frequently came not from keeping resources, but from distributing them. The person who could help others often became the most respected person in the group. So what was it really like to be a rich ancient human? It wasn't about luxury. It wasn't about owning endless possessions. It wasn't about living in comfort while everyone else suffered. True prehistoric wealth meant something deeper. Security, influence, knowledge, relationships, access to resources, the ability to survive uncertainty. In a dangerous world, wealth was measured by how protected you were against disaster. And in many ways, that definition hasn't changed as much as we think. Look closely at modern life. People still seek security. They still value strong social networks. They still compete for status. They still collect symbols of success. They still invest in knowledge. The tools are different. The technology is different. But the instincts remain remarkably familiar. Because beneath the surface, modern humans are still solving many of the same problems their ancestors faced thousands of years ago. So the next time you think about wealth, remember this. For most of human history, being rich had nothing to do with money. It meant having food when others were hungry, having allies when others were alone, having knowledge when others were lost, having security in an uncertain world. And perhaps that raises an interesting question. If one of your prehistoric ancestors suddenly appeared today, would they recognize our version of wealth? Or would they remind us that the things humans have always valued most were never really about possessions at all? If you enjoyed this journey into humanity's prehistoric past, subscribe to the channel, because sometimes the best way to understand the modern world is to travel back to the beginning.